Hello, everybody. How are you doing? I can't hear you, but I hope it's good. I'm Jordan Rocco, and I'm back for my third episode of the week, and this is episode 15 of the World of Sports podcast. Please leave us a like and subscribe because today, just like always, we have a special episode for you. We're going to look back and at the top recruits that were ranked by Rivals.com, which is a top recruiting site. I'm sure you've heard of it. And these were the number one recruits of each class. So we're going to start in 2005 and end up going to 2012. And we're going to decide if they lived up to the hype and they were legit or they were a bust. And since we're going all the way back from 2005, it's going to be a long video and I'm going to be talking a lot. So hopefully you enjoy it. And make sure you go get yourself some popcorn, a drink, and let's get into the show. We're going to start with Derek Williams. And like I said, starting in 2005, he was a top recruit in high school because he was a straight athlete. He could do it all. His senior season was his breakout year. He had 2,379 receiving yards, but only 4 reception touchdowns, which is weird for me, because the guy ran for so many yards, but really? Only 4 touchdowns? Come on, man. But this is what I talk about athlete. He had 4 rushing touchdowns as well. And then he went to college, and many of these players that are on this list actually had a good college career, but he didn't even have a good college career. His best season was when he was named first team All Big Ten his senior season, and this was the peak of Derek Williams' career. He was drafted in the 3rd round, in the 11th pick of the 3rd round, by the Detroit Lions, and that didn't really work out too well. He only played 2 seasons for them and then was waived. Then signed by the Steelers and waived, and then signed by a Canadian Football League team. And you'd think, oh, he's just kind of making the NFL. He'll make it in the CFL. Wrong. He was waived again. Derek Williams is a certified bust. Nothing else to say about this guy. Rivals.com didn't do too good on that one. Now let's get into 2006. Percy Harvin. Very successful athlete in high school. Not only was a stud in football, but he was also a track star and very good at basketball. Now this guy had speed. He ran a 4.32 40 in his freshman season of high school. I mean, that young and that fast. Oh my gosh. He won 5 state titles in 2005 for track. Defenders couldn't touch this guy because of his speed. In high school, but the bad thing about him, and I hate when I just hear things about athletes like this, he just wasn't disciplined. He had the athletic skills, but he sadly missed out on games due to getting suspended. One suspension was because he got into a fight in a game. Yeah, rough start to Percy Harvin's career. But he ended up playing at the University of Florida, which was coached by Urban Meyer at the time. He was also a stud in college. He was named the SEC Freshman of the Year. He was a dual threat. He played both receiver and running back and was equally talented at both. In his junior season, his final season, he not only ran for 660 yards along with 10 rushing touchdowns, but he also had 644 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. But this is where the discipline gets Percy Harvin. He tested positive for marijuana at the NFL Combine, and this hurt his draft stock. Didn't hurt him too bad because he was still selected by the Minnesota Vikings with the 22nd overall pick, and he ended up having a pretty decent NFL career. He played for 4 teams in 8 seasons. He ended up being more of a receiver and kick returner, but this is, like, many people know his name because he was a very talented kick returner. In his rookie season, he had 1,156 return yards as a kick returner and 2 touchdowns. He was the Rookie of the Year and was a Pro Bowl kick returner in 2010. But sadly, Percy Harvin dealt with many injuries and this held him back. And it's sad to see him in with injuries or have many injuries during his career, but he just didn't live up to his hype. Percy Harvin, due to the discipline and the injuries, I gotta say, he was a bust. Had a decent career, but you're the top recruit. So Rivals.com didn't do too good on that one. Now let's get into 2007. Jimmy Clausen. He is coming from a very athletic family. 2 of his brothers were Division I football players. He was a very successful quarterback in high school. He never lost a game. Talk about winning. Excuse me. He had 42 wins and no losses. His senior high school season was when he became on the radar of every college program. He threw for 49 touchdowns and 3,428 yards. His junior and final college season, he passed for 3,722 yards and 29 touchdowns. And he was the second team All-American. I just want to say the reason why I bring up all these stats is just because it's good to know how they performed before they entered the professional league, and you could tell whether they continue putting up good stats in professionals or just don't at all. And he was projected to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. But, I mean, at the time, they thought his class was stacked, but it really wasn't with quarterbacks. They had Tim Tebow and Sam Bradford, and Tim Tebow didn't even make it in the NFL, even though he was one of the best, if not the best, college quarterback of all time. Just couldn't make it in the league. And Sam Bradford had to deal with many injuries. Sadly, Jimmy Clausen was drafted 48th overall. And his NFL career, didn't go too well. He started in 10 games during his rookie season. This was the most action he had throughout his whole NFL career. He only threw for 3 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Yikes. And he had 1,558 yards. And then the rest of his career, he didn't play until the 2014 season, where he only started 1 game for the Chicago Bears. And then the next season, he started only 1 game for the Bears. Then he was released and played for the Ravens. And he started 2 games in 2016. But that was the end of Jimmy Clausen's career because he was cut by the Ravens. So I think we both can agree on this one. He's a bust. Now let's get into 2008. Terrell Pryor. Now this is another speedy receiver. He ran a 4.4 40-yard dash in high school, and just like Percy Harvin, he was another athlete. He was very talented at basketball, and he was considered a dual threat quarterback in high school. He had very good size, 6'6", over 230 pounds, and then he ended up attending Ohio State. He had a successful college career. In 3 seasons, he passed for 6,177 yards and 57 touchdowns, but he wasn't the most accurate quarterback. He threw for 26 interceptions, and this is what I mean by dual threat. He rushed for 2,164 yards and 17 touchdowns. This guy was very athletic. But this is where now discipline comes. He was not drafted in the NFL draft. In 2011, Pryor got caught driving a vehicle that had a suspended license and was alleged for making money by autographing memorabilia, which, I mean, I gotta be honest, I hate this rule by the NCAA. They're making you millions of dollars, millions of billions of trillions of dollars, and you're not even letting them get paid a little money. I mean, these guys gotta make money somehow. But he was banned by the NCAA. In 2011, he decided to withdraw from Ohio State, which made him eligible for the NFL supplemental draft. Going into this, when I did my research, I had no idea what this is, but if you're like me and you do not know, this is a draft for players who are not eligible for the actual draft since they are no longer in college or played in another professional league. Usually each season there's like one or two players that actually end up getting drafted in this. Matter of fact, no player got drafted in this last season, but he was drafted in the 3rd round and selected by the Oakland Raiders. He played in Oakland for 3 seasons as a quarterback. The most action he saw as a Raider was in his 3rd season in 2009. He passed for 1,798 yards and 7 touchdowns, but he lacked accuracy and he threw 11 interceptions. But he was still very athletic, rushed for 576 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was only able to start in 9 games because he was injured, and then he ended up losing the starting job and then traded to the Seattle Seahawks in 2014. He was unable to make the Seahawks roster, did not play during the whole 2014 season because no team wanted him. But in 2015, he was signed by the Chiefs, then released 4 months later. May of 2015, he signed with the Bengals and was released 5 weeks later. But in June of 2015, he was signed by the Cleveland Browns. And you think, oh, going to the worst team, he's not going to do that too good. I mean, if you thought that, we think alike because I definitely thought that, but wrong. He had his best career season in 2016. He had 1,007 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Oh, yeah, wait, let me mention that he switched from being a quarterback and played wide receiver. And the Browns didn't even have like a set starting quarterback. They had, I believe, I could be wrong, but 3 quarterbacks that year. But this was his breakout year. And this is what I mean by an athlete. He was able to he was able to rush very well, played quarterback, and then now his position is wide receiver. In the offseason, he signed with the Washington Redskins. In the most recent season, he really didn't do too well. But there's always next year. It's been quite an interesting career for the 28-year-old. But, I mean, after it all, I still got to say, he's a bust. He just couldn't make it. He couldn't live up to the hype. When you're the top recruit, even if you have like a pretty decent NFL career, you are expected to be one of the best in your draft class. And he just wasn't able to be one. Now we're going into 2009. Bryce Brown. He had an insane senior season, and let me just mention he was a running back. He rushed for 1,873 yards and 29 rushing touchdowns. Man, he entered the end zone 29 times. That's just incredible. These high school kids could not keep up to him, and all colleges wanted him, but he decided to go to Tennessee. Brown was a backup his freshman season. And then right after Lane Kiffin left the team in 2010 to go be a part of USC's coaching staff, Brown decided to leave Tennessee. He transferred to Kansas State. This is a long video, but please watch. Please continue watching. It's very interesting. He only played in 1 game, and he barely even played. He decided to leave Kansas State because he was ineligible since, now this is what I mentioned earlier, he was allegedly receiving money from boosters. And I really disagree with that from the NCAA. And that stopped him. But he was still able to be drafted in the NFL draft with a 229th overall pick by the Philadelphia Eagles. He played for a total of 3 NFL teams, and he just didn't make it. He was out of the league in 2016. And if you've watched my videos, I always mention how I hate comparisons. And he was compared to Adrian Peterson at one point. And this guy just had a terrible career. And he was compared to Adrian Peterson. That's just funny because those are just 2 opposite players. Adrian Peterson is one of the best running backs of all time. And I mean, this guy, rough NFL career. But now we're in 2010. Ronald Powell, our first defensive player on the list. He played multiple positions in high school, including linebacker, tight end, and his primary position, defensive end. Talk about an athlete. In his senior season, he had over 80 tackles, 13 sacks, and 28 tackles for a loss of yards. He attended the University of Florida and had a pretty solid sophomore season with 6 sacks until, sadly, I just hate when this happens to any NFL player, but the injury started to hit him. I mean, any athlete in general. It started with a torn ACL in the spring of 2012. Then he came back in 2013, but was not the same player that he was before. Started in 8 games and had 4 sacks. Ended up getting drafted in 2014 with the 169th overall pick by the New Orleans Saints. He decided to play outside linebacker in the NFL, and he didn't really get too much playing time for the Saints. He was released in 2015 and still suffered injury issues. In 2016, he was signed to the Chicago Bears practice squad. Then later that year, signed by the Seahawks to their main roster. In 2017, he was injured again and released once again. Now, that was the last of Ronald Powell in the NFL, and you can't really blame the rankings since you can't just predict a player to be healthy throughout his whole career. So I'm going to call him a bust, but it's not Rivals.com's fault. Now we're going into 2011. Another defensive end, Jadeveon Clowney. And now many of you have probably either seen or heard of him because he's actually had a very successful career. He was one of the most hyped recruits, especially when he was in college. I even remember seeing his hits on ESPN. He was always on the top 10 plays. In high school, he was a straight beast. He had 29 and a half sacks. Wow, he almost had 30. along with 162 tackles. Wow, so many. But he was so athletic. He even played running back sometimes. And now that's pretty crazy for a defensive player to also play an offensive position. He ran for 277 yards and 9 touchdowns. And he also had a very successful college career. In 3 seasons, he had 129 tackles and 24 sacks. This earned him the first overall pick by the Houston Texans. And sadly, he dealt with injury issues by only being able to play 4 games in his rookie season since he had a torn meniscus and he had to have knee surgery. Clowney returned in 2015 and started in 9 games and had 40 tackles and 4.5 sacks. Clowney had a big 2016 Pro Bowl year. He had 6 sacks and 52 tackles in 14 starts. He had a solid 2017 season. He was named to his 2nd Pro Bowl, but he had to drop out due to knee injuries. And hopefully the injuries don't keep coming. He's shown that he can play pretty healthy since the past 2 seasons. He's played in a good amount of games, but it is still a little early. I have to say, though, Clowney has lived up to the hype. Now, 2012, our final year, because I feel if I keep doing 2013, 2014, 2015, all those, it's like too early to predict if these players are a bust or not because they still have plenty of time left in their career. But we're going to talk about Doral Green Beckham. Now, another player who had an insane senior season, 119 receptions for 2,233 receiving yards and 24 touchdowns. He had an incredible high school career. Defenders could not even catch up to this guy. He had the speed. He had the shifty moves. You could not catch this guy. He attended the University of Missouri for his freshman and sophomore season, put up great numbers in his sophomore season with 883 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. But in 2014, Doral was dismissed from the University of Missouri due to legal troubles. I don't know what that means, but legal troubles. Poor guy. He transferred to the University of Oklahoma just to sit out a whole season. He didn't even play for them. And then he ended up declaring for the NFL draft after sitting out the whole junior season. Teams were still after Doral, although he really didn't make quite a name for himself in college. He ended up getting drafted by the Tennessee Titans with the 40th overall pick in the 2015 NFL draft. And now I bet the Titans are looking back like, wow, we messed up. But he only started in 5 games during his rookie season and had a total of 549 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Then he was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles and only started in 7 games. He really didn't fit their system and wasn't good enough to be a starting receiver for them. He ended up getting waived in 2017, didn't even play during the most recent season, the 2017 NFL season, and Doral was arrested on December 31st of 2017 with a DWI charge. Yeah, not the best way to celebrate New Year's. I'm not even going to ask if he's legit or a bust because I feel like we can all agree definitely a bust. And this comes to the point that I have to make. Now, many high school recruits are ranked with stars, and this just shows that only one of these players was actually lived up to the hype, and this just shows rankings really are not that important. Like, so many players end up being good, and rankings, I feel like they're just really irrelevant. Now, it's been a long video. If you watched this all, thank you so much. Please leave a like, subscribe, and we're going to be doing one of these for basketball, so please check that out. And thank you all for supporting our channel. Diego will be having episode 16 tomorrow. Please make sure you follow us on Twitter, TWS_podcast. Have a great rest of your week.